Hello guys, welcome to the session and we are going to discuss about the prelims 2024 civil service examination conducted by UPSC. This will be a very first reaction video, so it will be a very short video in a very brief, concise, nutshell manner of what actually happened on the GS paper 1. So it will be very short. We are not going to discuss in detail about the different questions, but on the different topics, etc. But regarding the trend and if any new type of questions actually came, so those kind of things will be dealt in this short session. All right. So moving ahead, so we are going to have an understanding of what actually happened. How was the question paper? So we can say that it is actually more or less an application level of question paper. For example, whatever things you actually studied from different textbooks, from different current affairs, materials and all these things. A lot of things actually appeared in the question paper. However, most of them were actually on the application level. So whatever things you learned, you had to apply some more of logic of yours. So which means a lot of rational thinking were actually in application in the actual exam. So with that content, you have to apply your own logic, your own rationality. Then only you could actually arrive at the answer. So that kind of application level questions were a lot in the question paper, first thing. And second thing is that a lot of questions, especially from the topics such as geography and all, a lot of such topics came from the NCERT textbooks. So it underlines, this exam again underlines the importance of NCERTs. So for example, the different layers of atmosphere, for example, and all those things, actually the water vapor questions. So all those different questions actually has roots from the NCERTs itself. So it definitely, this exam again reminds us about the significance and the importance of NCERTs. And regarding the risk work which we can take in the exam, so compared to the last year's exam, the 2023 prelims, this exam is a slightly, we can say, better, easier, we can say. So not that much easier. We cannot call it a very easy question paper. It's definitely moderate to difficult one. Compared to the last year, definitely a little bit of easiness was there. So the risk factor which we have to take into the question definitely was there. There were a lot of questions. We'll be going into some of the questions. So some of the questions were there. We had to take the risk factor. For example, we could easily strike off two options. For if there were two A, B, C, D options were there, we could easily strike off the two options A or B. Then we could, there were questions like that, 50-50 options were there. So those kind of easy elimination things were definitely there, which means that the techniques and the different methods in which we actually arrive at the question, there were a lot of such questions. We could apply that techniques in addition to the content. And last thing is that the interdisciplinary or the interconnected questions. For example, a lot of such questions were there, which actually was overlapping with this geography as well as environment. Some of the questions were actually a lot of art and culture questions were actually a lot directly coming from within the history textbooks actually, and such questions were definitely there. So interdisciplinary aspect was very much visible in the question papers. So we have to go through those some of the questions actually. And there was one question that is actually about the Sahel region, we can say. So last year also, the previous year also, there was a question regarding the Sahel region. So UPSC is actually giving as a hint that it is actually giving importance to the region such as Africa actually. Lot of different map-based questions were definitely there. So such questions were actually continuously being asked. Direct level, simple level questions were also a few, but still those questions were still there. And so ultimately we have to see that we have to analyze these kinds of trends so that we can understand we can at least predict a little bit of our future. What happens in our next UPSC exam? What is the pattern which UPSC might be attempting? If there are any new kinds of questions, if there are any new kind of question patterns or structures appear, we can train for that so that we will be prepared for the next year also if you are actually writing. In case bad luck happens and if you have to write next year also, you have to understand that these kind of structures are actually new type of question patterns, so we can be trained accordingly. And next thing about the ambiguous type of questions. For example, some questions, when we read a statement, one aspirant will be thinking in a manner, but that very same statement, if another person is reading, he'll be thinking in some other opposite direction. So there were some ambiguous void type of questions, statements were in those questions actually in the past UPSC questions, but definitely in this type of in this 2024 prelims questions, most of the questions, most of the statements were almost direct. They were very precise. They were almost very specific. So such ambiguous questions in which we will be confused whether the key will be A or C. We don't know exactly. So these kind of questions are actually comparatively less seen in the question paper. So having with this particular knowledge, we have to, with this assumption, basic assumption, we are going into the in-depth data analysis, brief analysis of the session. But before going, what do you think about that? What do you think about the question paper? So you can actually comment in the section below, comment section actually below the video actually, so that we and everybody will actually have an understanding, better understanding how the actual aspirants felt through. For example, one person will be saying it will be very difficult, but for some other aspirant, it will be moderate to difficult. So maybe the cutoff will be higher this time. So when we get the collective opinion, we will actually be able to frame almost a range we can actually assume. So make sure that you actually comment your opinion in the comment section below so that we can frame a collective opinion, whether it was easy or moderate, difficult or extremely difficult. But our take is that it was more or less moderate to difficult type of question, and definitely it was an easier question paper, slightly easier question paper compared to the last year. And as we go into the next slides, we are going to understand about the different types of questions. But before that, let me just remind you that you can actually scan this QR code actually, and you can go to the link in which our detailed question paper and detailed analysis of the question with the key and the detailed explanation will be there. So please scan the QR and you can go through the website and get your explanations. So next thing is that we have to understand about the different types of segments or topics or subjects from where these kind of questions happen. If there were any change in the emphasis of, or you can say the focus point of the exam, has it changed? Has the subject importance changed? So we can actually assume some of the things actually, whether the distribution of questions, whether the distribution of subjects in the exam. So we can actually say that there were almost very direct to very straightforward questions were asked in the polity segment. Almost 20 questions were asked in the polity segment directly. So when if you are an aspirant who is preparing for the UPSC exam, if you are going for the prelims examination, UPSC is telling you that almost 20% of the questions are actually from the polity segment itself. So if you study polity, which means that the cost effective ratio is actually very high. So the Indian polity segment is actually having almost 20%, that is 20 questions. So that is a very high number. So it is actually keeping up with the trend or bettering the trend actually. The second thing is actually the trend is seeing is on the geography, or you can see the geography and the environment. So both environment and as usual, the geography also. The geography is actually seeing a very increasing trend actually. At least more than at least 15 questions or more than 15 questions are actually directly or indirectly related with the geography actually, but more number of questions are indirectly related with the geography also. Here you can see those geography and environment and ecology. Here you can see that interdisciplinary approach. So whatever things you are actually studying for geography or environment, it can actually appear in a very complex manner. We'll be confused whether it is a geography question or whether it is an environmental question. So these two topics are some of the questions are definitely interdisciplinary. So those two things, and definitely there were some questions on the international relations also. Some of map-based questions were definitely there. And the science and technology, last year there were around 12 questions, and this year definitely there is actually more than 12, at least 13 questions were definitely there. Some of the questions had overlapping links with the environment ecology segment also. Economy definitely maintained the trend. It had definitely 15 questions with that. But one trend which we saw in this question paper is about the significance of Indian history, or you can say the both history as well as the art and culture segment was slightly reduced, we can say. So it is actually around 10 or less than 10 questions were actually from the history segment. So where the geography increased, where the science and technology increased slightly, those increase were actually compensated by the reduction of the history and art and culture. But there were definitely some other questions from the miscellaneous sections also. For example, a lot of different peripheral knowledge questions were actually definitely required. For example, the comparison of the ranks of the officers of the Indian Armed Forces. For example, the Indian Army, Indian Air Force, and Indian Navy. So that is not something which you can actually, that knowledge cannot be gained through a proper textbook. There is no, those kind of knowledge cannot be acquired like that. For example, some years back, there was a question on the different factors in which a food actually cooks inside a pressure cooker. So just imagine, you cannot actually buy a textbook which discusses the properties or features of a pressure cooker. So these kind of things, these are all experiential things. These are all observatory things. So you have to observe. You always keep a keen eye on the surroundings. You have to keep on observing the things. You have to analyze by your own, and you can gain the knowledge from those data points around you. So these kind of knowledge, assimilated knowledge, you can say, accumulated knowledge, you can say, these kind of knowledge actually comes to the application level. These kind of questions will be handy for those people who have those keen observation powers. And when we go to the different topics also in this particular thing, for example, in the international relations question, we already mentioned about the Sahel region. The question was actually repeated. There were previous questions also. There was a International Grains Council. India is definitely a member of the International Grain Council. So these kind of international treaties, the different organizations, and then there was Sumed pipeline. So that pipeline actually crosses from the Gulf countries to the Europe country, through the Mediterranean to the Europe countries, actually, European countries actually. So we can say this is a map-based question. This is a geographical question. However, this has got an international relations angle also. So these kind of interlinking, interconnected topics, questions were definitely there. And some of the questions from the environment department or the section was like, they definitely asked about the different insects actually, and the Indian fly fox. That was one question which was asked under the topic of Wildlife Protection Act. So Wildlife Protection Act was and is an extremely important topic. Continuously, year after year, that particular act was actually being asked. What about the Schedule 1 of the act? What are the animals in the Schedule 2 of that? For this year, that question actually came on the Indian flying fox, that question was actually based on Indian flying fox, but the context is Wildlife Protection Act. So UPSC is actually telling us repeatedly that these kind of acts are actually extremely important, which you have to definitely master. And there were definitely some of the schemes were also used. For example, there was Shrem Yogi Manthan was actually asked. Nari Shakti Vandan Yojana was actually asked. So some of the schemes were definitely asked in the question, but the number is actually limited to 2. And then there were some miscellaneous questions. For example, a question was there in which 2 books were actually written. That is The India's Way and Why Bharat Matters. And who is the author of these 2 books? It is actually Dr. S. Jaishankar, who is our foreign minister. So that kind of openly simple question, but however, we definitely know his name. We definitely know who he is, but some of the people will definitely not know that he is the author of these 2 books. And the name also is a very relevant thing, right? Because whether India versus Bharat, the name controversy is actually in the surrounding, and in the context of that, this particular directly a central minister's name is actually directly being given in the answer. So these kind of current affairs related things were actually directly asked. And there was one question that was actually asked on ethics committee also. So regarding the ethics committee, which was in the news recently in the last year also. For example, one Trinamool Congress MP, Mahua Moitar, was actually recommended by the ethics committee to be stripped of the MP post. So that kind of controversy was there. So ethics committee was actually in the news recently. So a lot of such questions, especially from the polity context, was actually in the current affair top perspective only. So when you're studying polity, when you're studying those 20 questions, make sure that it is actually from the NCERT level, definitely, but it definitely had additions or relations with the current affair perspectives. For example, some of the polity questions were definitely about the different state list and union list, the 8th schedule of the constitution, the delimitation commission, and regarding the amendment of the constitution, the money bill, the writ, the ethics committee actually, and regarding the Government of India Act of 1935, right to property. So all these questions actually are, everybody who actually prepared, who has actually read the basic textbooks of the NCERT will definitely understand what this is actually. So these questions were on the application level of all those data points. So this is actually the context of this particular polity. And regarding the history of definitely Buddha or Buddhism is actually very important topic. Every year continuously, some of the topics will definitely be coming related with Buddhism or Jainism. So this year also the topic related with Buddha was definitely there. The different names of the Buddha and the Buddhist monk Sanghabhuti. that particular topic was also there. So these kind of things are actually continuously being appearing repeatedly. So UPSC is definitely giving us a proper trend that what you exactly have to study, what you have to keep an eye on, what you should not miss. So these kind of things are extremely important when you are studying these different things, and make sure that whatever things you are studying, all these things has to be supplemented with nothing else than none other than the current affairs. So all those things were actually on the knowledge application level because of the current affairs addition or value addition, we can say. So when we go to the next slides, we can say about the different questions which are actually asked from the ClearIAS platform. For example, there are different courses which we actually offer. So from the different courses, there were a lot of such questions actually came. For example, they actually asked about the what are the basic things which are left out of the fuel cells. For example, water vapor. So what are the things actually out of the fuel cells? They actually asked about the Rafale, MiG-29 and Tejas flights, which is the fifth generation fighter planes. And then they definitely asked about the radars, giant stars, and we actually discussed about in the class we discussed about the different solstices and equinoxes. So there was a question on June 21, that is actually the summer solstice day. So that question was there, that Coriolis effect, we actually discussed on that. Then the different climate types actually, the equatorial type and the Chinese type of climate, Mediterranean type of climate. That question was directly asked. We actually definitely study about those, and it is actually blatantly directly given in the NCERTs also. And regarding the water vapor content and regarding the weathering of rocks, that we actually definitely study in the classes. Regarding the Ganga tributaries of the river, so the tributaries of Ganga was actually asked. We definitely mentioned about the tributaries of Ganga, Brahmaputra, Indus, Kaveri, Mahanadi, and Godavari, Krishna, Narmada, and Tavi, the major rivers. We definitely mentioned about that. And so which are the rivers in that order from the west to east. And definitely volcanic eruption, we had a class on, even for the NCERT classes also, there was a topic on the volcanoes and the eruption and what are the different materials erupted. And then regarding the Cornwallis, regarding that era of Cornwallis, regarding the Cornwallis era, that is the permanent settlement system, Rayatwari system. So these things are always mentioned in the NCERT classes and the prelims mains batches also. And regarding, we already mentioned about the, I guess I mentioned about listing out different things. For example, listing military exercises. So for example, that exercise Mitra Shakti was actually asked in the exam. So it is actually one question, it will fetch you 2 marks. But in this tight competition, that even that 2 marks is actually extremely important. And then we mentioned about the current affairs topic recently, that is actually Join Us 2.0, which was mentioned by the CDS, Chief of Defense Staff. And here the question, the topic actually came, what are the duties of the Chief of Defense Staff? That question is actually asked. Then bioreactor membranes, that topic was actually taken in the class. So a lot of such questions actually are actually from our courses. So please make sure that you have to understand what different types of courses we are actually offering. For example, we have got the prelims cum mains batch, that is actually online course. Then different study materials are actually available in our store actually. And and all these videos which you are actually watching is through the YouTube platform, of course. So that is also definitely one of the sources. And different textbooks and different our prelims test series also very important, which we are actually giving more importance, and we'll be in-depth detailed discussing all the different questions and giving explanations, and we'll be framing our prelims test series based on that particular modern up-to-date techniques definitely. So please make sure that you go through our offerings. So please make sure that you subscribe to those things as per your requirement. So when we are moving forward, we have to understand about the different patterns of questions. So I'm just listing out 2 questions here. You don't have to worry about the if you cannot read through these questions, please don't worry about that. This is a very brief session, right? We'll have a in-detail session, carefully explaining in detail about the different questions. So here I'm trying to give you an idea about the different patterns of questions which are being asked in the question paper. So we can see that a lot of such questions in the previous years were definitely repeated. For example, the pair-based questions were there, or giving 2 statements, 1 or 2 statements, one question, 1 only, 2 only, both 1 and 2, neither 1 nor 2. Those questions were definitely there. 3 statement questions were there. But then we see that there is actually a high number of questions which is actually on the statement level. For example, giving 2 statements, statement 1 and then statement 2. Then we will ask about if both statement 1 and 2 are correct, and statement 2 is the correct explanation of the statement 1. Those kind of questions, that questions were actually very high in number. So that kind of logically arriving at the answer type of question. So it does not necessarily mean that even if you know the both statements are actually right, or wrong, that you will never not get the full marks. What you have to do, you have to understand if the second statement is actually the correct explanation of the first statement, then only you can actually arrive at the correct answer properly. So those kind of questions are definitely there. But here we are actually going to give you two brief things about the recent addition of patterns. For example, the changes in patterns. The first thing is actually about this particular image. We can say, don't worry about this particular question if you can do it. So this is the consider the following information. They give it the region, for example, Central Asia, name of the mountain range, and then type of the mountain. So where it is actually, what is the mountain's name actually, and what type of mountain it is. So these kind of match the following, or the pair questions were there, and they asked about the how many of the above pairs or rows is the given information is correctly matched. So this is a pair-based question. How many pairs are actually right? But just look at that. There is actually 4 data points here, and you can see that there is actually 3 columns also. So this is actually extremely complex question. However, you have to understand in detail about the different things. So this was one type of question actually appearing, and there were actually 3 type of, this is actually 4 data points were there, and there were 3 data point questions are also there. So these kind of questions definitely appeared, and it definitely needs a trick or a technique or a mastery in technique to try, to crack those questions. Otherwise, you will be spending more amount of time in solving these type of questions. So next thing is actually about the statement based questions. So as you can actually see in this type of question, there is actually multiple statements. So earlier there were 2 statements, right? Statement 1, statement 2, and then there will be 4 options for you. But just look at here, there is actually statement 1, that is rainfall is one of the reasons for weathering of rocks. Statement number 2, rainwater contains carbon dioxide in the solution. Statement number 3, rainwater contains atmospheric oxygen. Just imagine 3 statements are actually given, and they're actually giving us the earlier answers. For example, both statement 2 and statement 3 are correct, and both of them explain statement 1. So these kind of multi-statement, that is, till now we were actually practicing or looking very focused on the 2 statement questions. Here we are actually having 3 statements. So that is actually one important change we can actually see in this particular thing, in this pattern, the change in the patterns of questions. So that is actually all we have to discuss about the different brief analysis of the thing. So regarding the expected cutoff, so normally after the exam, a lot of people after the GS exam will be really confused about whether I have to write CSAT actually, because I'll be so confused whether I have to write. This is actually very difficult. But just after the CSAT exam, when you come home, the first thing which goes to your mind will definitely be, what will the cutoff be actually? So here we are actually having a very preliminary assumptions only. So we are not going to say our actually margin, the range of cutoff actually. But please wait for our future videos. Actually, in the very few days, in 1 or 2 days, we'll be definitely exploring, and we'll be canvassing our, asking our students, student groups, and our viewers actually what their experience is actually about, and combining our views, combining our experience, and the viewers' experience also combinedly, we can give you a range of marks for the expected cutoff. So make sure that you comment in our channel of what your expected range of cutoff will be, whether the exam was actually difficult for you, how difficult was the exam for you. So if it is a collective approach, actually we can actually arrive at those particular cutoff in a very better manner. And we have to also understand about the different things which roadmap for ahead actually. So I'm just giving you 2 scenarios. What if you clear? What if you don't clear the exam, the prelims exam? So if I'm actually giving you the first opportunity, first scenario, that is, what if you clear the particular exam? So if you actually clear the particular exam, we are actually offering you the mains test series actually. So just like I said, it is actually a very affordable program starting with 9,999, and then actually what this particular test series actually training you is that once you actually clear your prelims, you definitely have your content, right? So only if you have your content, then only you will be able to write the mains exam. So you have your content, but you have to enrich your content. One point. Second thing is that mains is actually entirely different game compared to the prelims. You have to write it continuously. There are 9 papers, each of 3 hours duration. So you have to keep on writing, and that writing practice has to be there. So even if those people who are actually not, on the edge of the prelims cutoff actually, or those people, even if they're not clearing the prelims also, some of them actually will be very master in in cracking the prelims. Some may not be in the mains actually. So those people who want this particular thing, those people who are actually clearing the prelims exam, we can say that your writing practice is the most important thing when you're going for the mains. Content definitely matters, but you already have your content. At least a good amount of content will be in your head, actually in your brain. Why? Because then only you are clearing the prelims, right? So after that, you have to master, you have to polish your writing skills, so that we are actually offering you this particular thing that is actually called the mains test series. And when we are actually going ahead of the different courses which we are actually offering, so that writing practice has to be there, and we'll be giving you this mentorships and one-on-one guidance and other things, and value addition materials also regarding in the main series program. And the second scenario is that what if you actually don't clear the particular thing? What if you actually don't clear the prelims actually? So that is one important thing, right? So some of the things people will be on the edge actually. I myself have experienced that particular type of situation in which I don't know if I actually clear, if I would clear or if I would not clear. So what is the ideal thing which you have to do is that you have to keep preparing for the mains. So the mains, the prelims result is actually coming out after around 15 to 16 days, we can say. Today is actually June 16th of June 2024 is the date today, which means that around 15 days, which means that the prelims result may come on the last days of June, or we can say on the first week of July. That is the maximum date in which the prelims can actually postpone. So prelims result can come. So we have got around 15 days window to figure out what we have to do. But I would suggest you that don't waste your time. Make sure you feel that you would clear those exam. Those who are on the edges actually feel that you will definitely clear the exam and start preparing. And that even if you don't prepare, that is the scenario which we are actually telling you. That is one point we are actually telling you is actually about the fight back program, and second thing is actually about the prelims test series program. So I'm going to give you a very brief idea and about the two different programs. Regarding the fight back program, actually, if you think about the fight back program, this is actually an exclusive program which is actually for prelims cum mains. So this is actually prelims cum mains test series program. So it is a comprehensive approach. It will shape you a better aspirant for the next year if you are actually going for the next year again. And it is actually designed exclusively for the repeaters actually. So we can say that it is actually not for the beginners. It is actually for the repeaters who actually could not crack the prelims, or who actually were on the edges and who lost prelims for 1 or 2 marks. For those people, we are actually launching this particular program. And those repeaters who are actually having a really good content in their brain, and they are actually ready to put great great fight again on the after correcting the past mistakes actually. And this is actually for those people only who are actually not beginners. That is one important point we have to understand. And the next thing is that if you are actually what are the contents we are actually offering in the fight back course, you can say that we are actually having prelims daily, multiple choice questions are there, daily answer rating questions will be there, prelims test series, mains test series, different study materials are actually being given free of classes, and weekly current affair classes will be definitely be there. So continuously for 1 year, every week will be updated with the recent current affair events and all. And along with that, there will be CSAT classes also, and there will be strategy classes by Sir Alexander George sir also, and definitely one-on-one guidance on the personal mentorship and guidance will be there for the fight back program. And this is actually an alternative plan actually. A study plan will be given to you for 1 year. That is 1 year from this particular moment onwards to the next year preparation. Some of students actually complained to us that how we have to study. I know what to study, that book has to be studied, but how to actually guide, how to divide it and study that. So that kind of study plans will be giving it to you on that in a very beginner level, so that there won't be any hectic level, but very precisely divided, easily manageable 1 year study plan will be affordably given to you. And this is the program which we are actually saying, that is the fight back program. But the next thing is actually, if you don't want to, and this fight back program also includes the prelims test series also. So fight back is actually mains test series plus prelims test series also. And the next thing is actually the prelims test series program can be independently joined also in this particular session. So that is actually an online mock test series. It is actually a 1 year round mock test. There are around 45 mock tests will be there. Out of that, around 5 of them will be CSAT and 16 full tests will be there. Rest of them will be the sectional tests. That is the history, geography, economy, all these kind of different sectional or the topic wise questions, papers will also be there. So here we are actually winding up this session actually. I hope it was actually slightly helpful for you on how to understand what was the trend of the particular question paper of this year. And please feel free to visit the our website, that is clearias.com, so that there you will have your detailed explanation set of the current question paper with the key also, and different links to our different courses will definitely be there. So feel free to contact us and tell your grievances, tell your ask your doubts, and also that we can guide you for properly also. And for this year's mains also, or for those people for the next year's prelims also. So thank you for watching.